Hey guys, Hink here. Today I got a hot take for you, okay? This is gonna be my top 5 hard truths about PE that some of you might not wanna hear, but you need to hear. So stay tuned, we're gonna go through it. All right, guys, there's a lot of what I would call like hard truths about PE that I think it kind of swept under the rug or not brought up about as much. And so I want to make sure we bring those to light today and discuss them. So these aren't necessarily going to be in any particular order, but let's get into it, okay? So the first harsh truth that we're going to talk about is that it might not work as well as you think it will. There are so many people that get kind of conditioned to want that. You see an advertisement for pills and they're like, oh, put on 5 inches in 5 weeks. And so, you just kind of get built up in your head that those are the kinds of gains that you can make, or maybe it's a hopeful thing about like, those are the type of gains that you can make, but you tend to not get that quick of a gain and you don't get that much of a gain. And so many guys on here will talk about how big before I get too big. It's kind of like guys who lift in the gym that are worried about getting too muscular. Like, it's not gonna happen. And so the gains are slow, guys. My rate of gains was like 0.08 like inches per month in length when I was actively doing this. It was very slow. Over the course of 24 months, I've put on like just over an inch in length and not even an inch in girth. And so that's with like over 24 months of active PE, guys. So it's not as quick as you think it's gonna be. And you really need to have realistic expectations when you go into this. My expectation was if I could get a quarter of an inch, I would be out of this moon, like off this chart, like just thrilled about my gains. And I got that and exceeded it, but it's much easier to do that than get discouraged when you say, my goal is to get an inch in 3 months, and then, you barely get an eighth of an inch, and then you're discouraged and you quit, guys. Harsh truth number one, or hard truth number one, you're not gonna gain as quickly as you think you will, and you're probably not gonna gain as much as you're hoping to as well, okay? So, hard truth number two, this does not work for everybody. So for some people, they're just doing it incorrectly, okay? Whether it be they're not pulling with enough force, or maybe they're pulling with too much force, or maybe they don't respond to certain devices. But for whatever reason, this is ineffective for some people. Some people just might have like a very thick tunica, which limits their rate of gains, guys. But you have to be realistic that there are a not insignificant amount of people that just don't gain from this. You could potentially be one of them. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try, in my opinion, but it does mean you need to be aware that, hey, maybe it might not work for you, guys. It's just, I hate that. I do think that the people that it doesn't work for are the same people that say diet and exercise doesn't work for them. Basically what I'm saying is they're doing it wrong. But for some people, they try, they at least report that they try all these different techniques and it still doesn't work for them, guys. And so that's harsh truth number two. So along with that, when I first got into PE, I was using an extender and I was using a crappy extender, which I was using incorrectly, and I thought it wasn't working for me, and I gave it up until basically I came across this sub literally like, gosh, 10 years later. And so once again, guys, most of the time when it doesn't work, it's due to incorrect technique, but it is possible that you might not gain. And so once again, that's the next harsh truth, okay? Harsh truth number three, guys. A lot of the thought leaders, I'll just put it that way, the gurus, whatever you want to call them, guys, the veterans, don't know what the hell they're talking about. I mean, look, hot take Hink here. I'm going to go ahead and put that out there. I'm not trying to start any fights. That's why I'm not calling out any names or anything like that, guys. But guys, this is the wild, wild west, okay? I kind of pride myself on bringing as much real science as I can to this, but most of that is in the context of injury prevention and actual urologic sciences that you can actually, read a paper, literally published paper about hard flaccid, for example, okay? There are, yes, published papers about extenders work, but for the most part, it's the wild, wild west. Like, we don't know anything. And so, like, a big hats off to BD here, because he has basically like completely done a 180 in his whole like thought approach here about like, a year or two ago I was saying this and I actually disagree with what I was saying then. And so there's not a lot of guys that actually have the stones to actually say, yeah, I know I went on record and said this, but I think I was very wrong. Here's why I think I'm right. And, certainly BD and, an up-and-comer, if you will, but Perv McSwerve are really trying to bring science as far as what they can. But guys, like, this stuff is, like, even these guys that come from things like like, once again, I'm not trying to throw shots, but like Thunder's place, like there's just a lot of misinformation and a lot of, quite frankly, dangerous information that is still out there today. You know, that's kind of what I'm trying to like bring a more safe approach to it, guys. But you know, some of the stuff that I see from actually pretty like well thought of guys, sometimes it just makes me cringe. So like one thing, for example, was like the side to side stretch, where you basically like actively stretch while you're moving from side to side. Like that is a dangerous exercise, but yet across like all of these different forums and blogs and routines, like you would see this stretch come in and it's like, guys, like that is dangerous on that neurovascular bundle. Like, what are you doing? You can't do that. And so the point in saying this, which I don't know who these people are that think I'm out here just like spewing nonsense and saying you should listen to me. But guys, listen, well, listen to me now, but don't listen to me, okay? When I make my posts about this is why I recommend things like citrulline, like actually go to the papers that I'm referencing and read those papers and actually like read the information for yourself and see if it makes sense. Don't just be like, oh, well, Hink said it, so, you know, it must be true. Or for anybody, guys, or BD said it must be true. Or, oh, this is in the, you know, a joke for you, beginner's routine, so it must work. Like, really try to critically assess these things, okay? So don't listen to what I'm saying, but yet do listen to this video. I know, right? There's a little paradox there. But what I'm saying is question everything that anybody tells you and see if it actually makes sense. And go to the references they provide, and hopefully they provide references, because there's some of these people out here that use this like expert fallacy where they're just like, I'm an expert, listen to me because I know what I'm talking about and I use fancy terms, and because I use fancy words and flowery language, that means that I know what I'm talking about, and this is why you should do what I'm telling you to do, guys. And so there's still a lot of that in here. But anyways, harsh truth number 3. Before we get into the next, if you would just take a second to subscribe. I know a lot of you guys are watching my video and very few are subscribed, so it really does mean a lot, and it lets me know that this is worth my time and you guys are actually appreciating this content. Along with that, please give me a thumbs up too, because it helps me grow the channel, guys. And I'm trying to bring helpful information out here. So the next one is actually like number 3, part B, because one of the things is like people on Reddit, and the same with these, like along with Thunder's Place. Now I'm not talking about like the gurus or the expert or the veterans. I'm talking about other guys. Like they don't know anything, okay? And that's not entirely true. But I have seen some of the most dangerous information where, you know, I mean, I get it, it's the internet, but guys will come on there and be like, hey, you know, I'm trying to gain length. Like, what's one thing I should do? And people will be like, oh, you know, I did this, and this, and it's like side-to-side stretches that I was just telling you about that are like incredibly dangerous, or jelking still, or like, oh yeah, you know, I strap on a noose extender and sleep in it for 8 hours without changing it, and you know, I gained this, and it's just like, but people will actually believe that and listen to it, guys. There was one guy on Reddit, because I had an injury client, and they said that they made massive girth gains by sleeping in a silicone ring around his member. And because this guy listened to that anonymous Reddit person, he literally developed penile fibrosis because he was sleeping in a silicone ring for like months on end, and was diagnosed by a urologist with fibrosis, guys. So you have to be careful who you listen to on the internet and fact check. Some of you guys are so lazy that just like, and don't take the time. One guy mentioned Cialis, and so I just saw something about some guy who's like, oh yeah, I heard something about Cialis might be helpful, so I want to know how many days a week I can take a 20 milligram Cialis. That's like, guys, like that is dangerous if you don't have erectile dysfunction and this isn't prescribed for you and you get some off-label or some research lab chemical. Like, you can't do that. Gosh, like you kids these days, but it's like, seriously, God, I mean, some of the stuff that I see done, and, you know, hats off, I guess, to some of these guys that are doing it in the name of science, but like, I really think when people get to be in their like 40s like me, they're going to look back on some of the crap that they did, especially if their member no longer works, and be like, what the heck was I thinking? So the next harsh truth, which this would be number 4, or hard truth, whatever, is there are so many exaggerated and faked gains on even these forums, even on our subreddit getting bigger, that it makes me sick, okay? And I do believe that like very few people are actually malicious about it, but there's so many people who will change the angle push it into their fat pad more, change the, like, I don't know, sometimes even things like lighting. And then there's people who straight up will like Photoshop. It just leads to these like false impressions. And another thing that bothers me, that really bothers me, once again, I'm not taking shots at anybody, but it's so many guys on here are like, yeah, I've put on 2 inches, and then we'll have like an after picture and they're like, you know, let's say 8 inches. Then they have no before picture. They're just like, oh no, trust me, bro, I was at 6. Once again, I'm not trying to take shots at anybody, but I personally, now I'm not scrolling through looking at, you know, pictures of guys all day on these subreddits, but I have yet to come across any definitive evidence of anybody gaining more than, you know, I'll be generous, more than 1.5. I have yet to see anybody with lights out definitive evidence of gaining more than 1.5 inches. I've seen actually a decent amount of people that have put on 1 inch, but I have yet to come across anybody bigger than that. And there are a lot of guys on the subreddit that claim over 2 inches in length. I have yet to see it. I have yet to see, okay, here's a before picture with a measurement, with a realistic measurement, and here's an after picture, guys. And so, not trying to throw shade, and, you know, please sound off in the comments. Actually, guys, I did forget to say, please comment, you know, let me know what your thoughts are about this video. But, like, it just, that's the fact of the matter, guys. And, you know, there's some people who actually have the integrity to go on and say, you know, actually, when I was posting stuff before, I might have been, you know, maybe hedging my gains a little bit, or exaggerating a little bit, or, you know, pushing it in a little bit, or angling a little differently. Whether it was intentional or not, they say, you know, maybe I didn't have quite the gains that I did. And, you know, hats off to people who actually have the integrity to do that. But guys, and even just with these flares on the subreddits, man, these guys are LARPing. They're like, oh yeah, I went from 5 to 8 over 2 years. I don't believe it, guys. And, you know, it's what it is. You know, I try to post what pictures that I can that have shown my gains, you know, take it or leave it. Some of my photos are not as good as others, but anyways, there's just a lot of BS and, you know, effery out here, especially with people who are promoting any kind of product. And that, you know, and the last harsh truth, number 5, and this is something that I'm pretty passionate about, is obviously there is a significant risk of injury. Just today, guys, no matter how many times I try to say, like, take it slow, gradual, you know, increase in strength. There was a guy today on the, you know, PE injury sub, and he said, I was doing manual stretches and I pulled too hard. I felt a pop and now I can't get hard. And it's like, dude, like, why are you pulling so hard? You start gently and gradually extend until you get to a comfortable stretch. You don't just grab and just yank. But, you know, no matter how many times you say stuff like that, people don't necessarily want to listen. But the fact of the matter is you can do everything right and still get injured, guys. And we don't like to, well, some people don't like to talk about it. I encourage anybody to talk about not only their injury, but 9.5 times out of 10, how they recovered from that injury. Because we need more stories and we need to bring this more to light about that people do get injured, but yes, people do recover. But, you know, we like to, I mean, that my whole thing is, like, I do think this stuff works. I've posted my gains. I've posted the medical evidence behind it. But more importantly, I want people to try to do it safely and minimize their risk, which is why it's like, please, for the love of Christ, never do the side-to-side stretch. Please never joke. Like, these are the reasons why you should not do these things. But the fact of the matter is that you're dealing with a very sensitive and very delicate structure. I know of nobody who's been doing this for more than a year that has not had in some way at least some kind of injury, where it be like mild numbness, temporary hard flaccid, and I'm not even talking things like discoloration or blisters. I mean like more serious stuff that actually can affect the function. And so if you are considering doing any kind of PE, you have to understand that there is a risk that you could permanently damage yourself. And you have to ask yourself if it is worth it. I don't blindly recommend any of this PE stuff. You need to, you know, consider if it's appropriate for you, something like a chronic low dose of a PDE5 inhibitor to limit the risk of injury and then limit the risk of long-term problems, including things like fibrosis. That's why I've tried to modify stretches. I personally think that before, pumps were kind of frowned upon and clamping was like the way to go. And I've presented evidence that, you know, why pumping might be a safer alternative, not a foolproof alternative, but potentially a safer alternative. The fact of the matter is you have to be willing to undertake some kind of risk if you are going to consider this. That's it for the list, guys. And so I'm not trying to ruffle feathers. Please let me know what you think about this list in the comments. If you need to reach me, my Patreon is Doc Hink. Until the next one, guys, I appreciate you watching. Please do your own research, form your own conclusions. I'll catch you on the next one.